Well, ladies and gentlemen, an action-packed news day today of retarded nonsense out of Retardanistan. But before we get on to the main video of today, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help. So let's start at the top. And this is the first news story that apparently News24 has doxed an IDF officer. This is an individual who's apparently involved in an elite sniper unit in, well, the RDF. Now, one would assume that this is an individual who's moved to Israel and may have to serve in the army there. I don't know, who knows? But in any case, let's actually look at the news. Now, the news suggests that the Hawks are investigating a 22-year-old Santon man named Aaron Bayhak for joining the IDF without authorization from the South African government. And this is in accordance with South Africa's regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act. So what does the Act actually say? Well, it says that if you're going abroad to serve in a foreign military, you need to apply in South Africa for approval to join the foreign armed force underneath this Act. And if you don't, apparently it's a criminal offense, they suggest. So now that we understand basically what the Act says, we have to go, okay, so effectively the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act number 15 of 1998 criminalizes mercenary activity and providing military assistance to foreign armed forces without prior authorization. It makes sense. And now that should apply to ISIS, the IDF, the French Foreign Legion, or even the Ukrainian army. It should apply to, well, everybody. So, has there been any evidence of South Africa basically prosecuting Muslims who've joined ISIS or other Islamist militant groups? Now, we know there are actually cases of South African Muslims who traveled to Syria or Iraq to fight for ISIS. We've known about them. There are some noticeable cases from 2015, 2016. Have any of them been prosecuted upon their return? No, not one. The MPA and the State Security Agency admitted tracking suspects but failed to follow through with arrests on pretty much all the cases. So yes, that would appear that no one's been prosecuted from the Muslim side, but it would appear that the IDF, a UN-recognized state military with a legal structure, not a terrorist organization like ISIS, well, that's a different story. So, let's actually look at it and go a little bit further. Well, how many individuals are we talking? Maybe it's just a fluke of numbers, right? Well, at least 40 to 60 South Africans were identified by intelligence agencies between 2014 and 2017 as having joined ISIS and other related jihadi groups. There are a few prominent cases, including Yusuf Patel and his wife from Cape Town who were killed in Syria. There's even Shariz Mohammed, a South African journalist, a photographic journalist who was kidnapped in Syria, reportedly by an Islamist group. So yeah, some actual real-life high-profile cases. So why then has the Jewish IDF officer been singled out? Well, actually, if we look at it, we would note that something really peculiar tends to occur in South Africa. And that is in 2009, DIRCO, yep, always DIRCO, issued public threats to prosecute South Africans fighting with the IDF, but have never done so for any other state. Again, in 2021, DIRCO condemned the IDF whilst remaining silent on South Africans who had gone abroad to join the Taliban, Hamas, or foreign militias in Libya or Ukraine. The Palestinian lobby in South Africa, which includes the BDSA, and numerous journalists have continued to actively campaign to criminalize IDF volunteers, often pushing the Hawks to do something about it, while simultaneously many Islamist-linked organizations within South Africa, such as Al Jamar, have downplayed or even praised fighters who, went to Syria. So yes, we can clearly see the political ideology and the anti-Semitism coming out of DIRCO. But what is really important is, why is News24 following government propaganda? In fact, we're actually seeing the anti-Semitic approach from the government being amplified in News24. In fact, here, have a watch of this video.
We live in a time where truth is too often sacrificed for headlines. News24 published an image of a young boy Mohammed claiming his condition was due to famine in Gaza. But the truth? Mohammed was born with severe genetic disorders. He suffers from cerebral palsy and hypoxemia. A medical report from May 2025 confirms this. His condition is medical, not nutritional. Yet, News24 used his image not once, not twice, but 3 times to falsely report famine. They weren't just reporting, they were pushing a narrative. To intensify the emotional impact, the photographer removed his diaper and replaced it with a garbage bag. This isn't journalism, it is staging and it is exploitation. And the deception didn't stop there. In the photos, Mohammed appears malnourished, yet his mother and his brother, who are healthy, are deliberately cropped out or blurred to maintain the illusion. Then, in a moment of shocking irony, News24 published an open letter from the South African National Editors Forum calling for support for Gaza, using the same debunked image. And even after Adrian Basson, News24's editor, was directly informed of the facts, he remained silent. You cannot preach ethics while breaking every code of integrity. The truth matters. Journalism should inform and not manipulate. News24 owes the public and their child an apology.
Now, it is concerning when you say that the independent media is no longer independent and that the propaganda arm known as the media enterprises are now, well, government propaganda pieces, because it does mean that it becomes more difficult to trust the news that they say. I mean, this from the so-called super trusted news outlet, right? Anyway, let's move on to the next story. And this is the news story that Donald Trump has accused the BRICS nations, which include South Africa, of trying to destroy the dollar by advancing de-dollarization efforts in an attempt to promote an alternative currency. Now, this isn't a conspiracy theory. BRICS have actively said that this is what they're attempting to do. Now, he has threatened an additional 10% on countries within the BRICS bloc, arguing that the loss of the dollar would be as significant as losing a major world war, were it to lose its reserve bank status. So, what does that actually mean? Well, looks like South Africa might get hit again with a further 10% for its efforts to, well, destroy the dollar. And let's be honest, South Africa has very much attempted to do that. Now, according to the South African government's relations with the US, news has come out that according to the South African government, an ambassador to the US will be appointed any day now. They're close. They're really, really close. Super close. Like, just any day now. It's now. It's just now. Yeah, we don't really know what's going on with this, but everybody can see that the lack of an ambassador to the US at this point in time is very problematic, specifically in terms of negotiating the new trade rules. Well, with the trade rules needing to be renegotiated, it's a good thing we got Jonas. Remember, the special trade envoy, who news has come out that he has not yet actually flown to the US. Not once. And this was confirmed by the Foreign Minister Lamola when questions were raised around the functionality of South Africa's trade diplomacy to the US. Now, we are reminded that when Cyril Ramaphosa was asked about Jonas, he did describe his work as being very satisfactory. So the actual special envoy, the special trade envoy to the US, has never actually been to the US, but his work is A-OK. Yeah, it's typical ANC, this, isn't it? But don't worry. According to them, no stress. At least we've got the Chinese market. Well, news has come out that the Chinese e-commerce players, which is Shine and Temu, have disrupted South Africa's retail space and has been responsible for 8,000 job losses in retail and manufacturing over the last 4 years, with projections showing that a potential future job loss could amount to over 34,000 jobs by 2030 if current market share trends continue. This is with a manufacturing revenue of 6.2 billion rand currently at stake. Now, these platforms captured approximately 3.6% of South Africa's clothing and textile market, exploiting loopholes and undertaxed imports, and ultimately have cost, well, jobs. But you see, this is what happens when you deal with a manufacturing economy. They want to sell you stuff. They don't want to buy your stuff. And this is what the ANC keeps forgetting in terms of its interactions with the Chinese. The Chinese don't want to buy our stuff. Now, given everything that's gone on with the US and given the actual amount of jobs that could be lost and the way that it's impacting the economy, it should be no surprise that news has come out. Business groups are preparing for a major showdown between the government and the private sector, with business groups asserting that while South Africa continues to rely on entitlement-based policies, they're saying that growth in the economy is, well, basically not going to happen. What they're saying is that the government needs to have deeper private sector engagement in order to actually promote growth and put forward actual pro-growth policies, suggesting that the government is hobbling business opportunities and undermining competitiveness, effectively shooting itself in the foot. Now, despite some modest private sector growth, cost pressures, especially fuel, wages, and currency volatility, continue to constrain investment and hiring progress in South Africa. So, effectively, this is the private sector saying to the government, the reason that we have no jobs in the country, because of you, not because of us, because of things that you're doing. And if you want us to create jobs, you need to shut up and get out the way. And everybody's been saying this now for the longest time. And it's actually about time for the business sectors to come through to the front line and directly challenge the ANC on its, well, anti-growth policies. So on to the next news article. This is that former President Jacob Zuma, the now leader of the MK party, has issued a legal letter demanding explanations from Cyril Ramaphosa or Cyril's resignation over the appointment of the acting police minister. Now, according to Zuma, he's given Ramaphosa until the 8th of August to comply or face legal proceedings over alleged constitutional violations, with Zuma suggesting that actually were it to be him, and he says he has examples of this, he would have just fired the police minister for the allegations of corruption. So he says this is what Ramaphosa keeps doing. Put them on the bench, continue to pay him, even though they're corruption accused. And Jacob Zuma says, would you accuse me of corruption? What about you? So yeah, you can let me know what you think of that in the comment section below. So, on to some final news stories. This is the first news story that Ramaphosa has warned that the increasing divergence between the ANC and its alliance partner, the SSCP, risks derailing the national transformation agenda and fracturing its political base. And to that I say, about bloody time, we're all looking forward to it, but what's the problem here? But in any case, he sees that the SSCP is going to derail the National Democratic Revolution. And I don't see a problem with that, Ramaphosa, so may the fracturing continue. At the same time, the ANC's NEC plans to expand the GNU to possibly expand the GNU to include Action SA and the National Civic Congress, the NCC, which is stirring constitutional debates around the formation of the GNU and potentially provoking tension with the DA. Now, Ramaphosa has further cautioned that dual party membership of the ANC and the SACP could threaten party loyalty and stability within the alliance, and to that I would say, this idea of party loyalty has become really problematic for the country. It's the reason we have this problem in the first place. Your loyalty should be to the country first, not to your political ideology. And this is why the ANC is fraught and just a gross, deformed party. And on to a final news story, and this is that the mining minister, Gwede Mantashe, has rebuffed proposals from CEO Neil Froman, arguing that his department was excluded from crafting a critical plan to provide mining minerals to U.S. partners. Now, according to Gwede Mantashe, he criticized the entire plan as potentially constraining domestic mining autonomy and bypassing ministerial oversight. And so, according to him, the plan shouldn't continue. So there is this plan. There's this news that there's this plan that the Americans are trying to do some kind of mining deal. And would you know it, Gwede is like, but where's my cut? Why am I not involved in this? This cannot continue if I'm not there and I don't have my paws in it. Yeah, that's pretty much the way the government works. Like if they're not involved and they don't get their pound of flesh, they don't want to know anything about it. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we have tariff problems. This is why we have trade relations problems with the US. Anyway, these are all just my opinions. Do let me know what you think of the news stories in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.